Hello everyone, this is Zeeebo and welcome to this AFK Journey video. So in this AFK Journey video, we're going to do an updated EX weapon priority guide where we break down the tier levels of the unit and give our EX weapon recommendation based on this list right here. So this will be the final list. I'll be explaining each and every one of the units positioning and then talking about the recommended EX weapon. And before that, just a few disclaimers. So number one, I'll be following the format that I did for the AFK Journey EX weapon priority guide on the AFK Journey official page, where we rank the unit based on their tiers, their usability, as well as where they excel at, and then giving a recommended EX weapon itself. Speaking about the recommended EX weapon, if the unit is recommended at EX5, generally speaking, number one, either the unit is good enough at just EX5 and the unit doesn't need more to do what the unit wants to do, or the unit is underused, so you don't actually need that much EX weapon levels or spend resources on the EX weapon itself, and that's why they are at the EX5 tier. Either they're good enough at EX5 or they're underused, or they just don't need you to invest in their EX weapon for their EX weapon levels, so that's why they are there. And then for those of the units that are EX8, these units have a haste stats inbuilt into their EX weapon, so in certain situations where the haste stat is really helpful to do what the units wants to do, that's where you actually want to upgrade their EX weapon beyond EX5 to EX8 to get that additional haste stats. So after EX8 itself, most of the EX weapon don't have a haste stats, so that's where these units, they are good enough at just EX8 because they might be useful in some situations and you want that maximum haste stats on those units for them to do what they want to do. And then for the EX10, most units work in the EX10 range because they unlock their level 3 abilities, and that's pretty much like the max out ability for the unit in most cases. And for units which are recommended to be at EX15, number one, either the EX15 ability is super duper game changing, or number two, the units will benefit a lot from that increase in ability or the increase in stats from the EX weapon for you to break through your damage records or get better rankings in general. So that's why their EX weapon is recommended at EX15 itself. So with all those disclaimers out of the way, let us start with the underused tier. For the underused niche tiers, we will just talk about the units briefly because they are not seeing that much use. I'll just talk about why they are not so used and why they are niche, right, depending on where they are put at. So starting off with the first unit, we have Danny right here. So Danny's pretty underused as a tank because you have better options in terms of the PvE side as well as the PvP side. So like you have Torrent, you have Foresto, you have Almas. Almas being like this upward competitor with Danny because Almas is also a Graveborn tank that synergizes way better with all the other Wilders unit. That's why Danny is underused right here. So EX5, if you are not sort of investing in Danny that much. Then for Khafra's case, doesn't see much use anywhere. The only time where I see Khafra being used is if the Khafra has a lot of Paragon tiers, or maybe in Dura's Trial where you actually get to benefit from Khafra's booster ability. Other than that, I don't see people using Khafra, and probably not a unit I'll recommend people to invest in unless you really love his design. Celezo, same thing, same issues as Khafra. I think Celezo does see some use for certain PvP teams, but like in most cases when I do see Celezo work, it's because the Celezo has more stats, right? Not because the Celezo is a good unit in general. So I don't actually see Celezo being used for like bossing or even like your normal AFK stages, so pretty underused. Sisia is a unit which might see some use for damage related contents for the Graveborn side, but right now I think Sisia's definitely super underused because the ultimate is really slow. So PvP wise, there's a lot of comms that are just way faster, and even if you do get Sisia off, the ultimate is not as impactful as it used to be because of all the different OP units around. So that's why Sisia is relatively underused. For Hodgkin case, I initially thought that Hodgkin would be a generally like useful PV character with the Zoo teams as well as with the physical defense debuff, but for this season itself, somehow Zoo team is not as like spectacular. I don't see a lot of Zoo teams for the PvP side, neither do I see a lot of Zoo teams for the AFK stage pushing side. So I don't think the idea of Zoo is that good, and Hodgkin specifically as a physical defense debuffer also isn't as good as the likes of Laika, for example, which is able to provide the physical defense debuff with the buff for certain team setups. So that's why Hodgkin is underused. Faye, Luca, Valen, Walker, Atalanta, yeah, I don't know, I just don't see them around a lot. Don't see anyone actually using them, so that's why they're in the underused tier or EX5. Lumon, Soren, Satrana. To be fair, I think you can use Lumon for your smoky teams for certain AFK stages, but like you have a lot of other options and you have a lot of like units that are way better and you would invest your resources in. So that's why Lumon's pretty underused right now. Like if you really want to force him into the PvE centric side with Smoky team, is possible, but like in most cases I think like you have other options. Like you don't actually need Lumon for those teams anyway. Then for Soren's case, like I think Starlord will be very disappointed. So if Starlord is watching this, I apologize, but like I think I've seen some like replays and arena teams where people feature Soren. At least even in my free-to-play account, I've seen some Sorens running around, but like I don't know, I just don't see Soren being that good, because like Soren's survival is not that strong, and then this season Mauler's Molotov is not survival centric. So like in the previous season, I think you can definitely pair Soren with the Molotov, and then he can go inbound and then survive and then do massive AoE damage with control. But like this season, he has this survival issue which the Tau doesn't fix, and at the same time his ultimate and his build up is a little bit too slow. So like if I were to choose between Soren and Lenya, which are like very good units for, okay, Lenya actually should be in the versatile, but I'll talk about Lenya later. So if I were to choose between these two, right, like I'll definitely choose Lenya all the time, because Lenya is just more versatile and more useful across different contents compared to Soren. So that's why Soren's underused. Satrana, same thing. Like Satrana has always been this unit that jumps in and out of niche, underused, because of the mechanics that the season offers, right, in the magic charm ability as well as the season ability. But this season unfortunately not that good for her, so she's back to the underused tier. And then for the niche tier, Parisa EX5, Parisa is seeing use for like certain damage related contents because of her potential damage output, but then like there are a lot of better damage dealers up there, which I'll say it's a lot more versatile and a lot more powerful compared to her in most situations. So you can definitely use her. You can use her buffing abilities for certain teams, and you use her for her magical damage as she builds up more stats later on. But like I'll still put her in a niche, and I think EX5 is more than sufficient. So if you use her more, I think you can bump her to EX10 to give her more DPS and get that level 10 ability. So that's that. Florabelle, same thing, same as Hodgkin. I think Zoo this season is really very weak. So like the times where I see Florabelle being used is mostly with the Wildest factional talent, and you're using Florabelle as a anti-single target tool, or use Florabelle for her control ability in the team. So I think she's usable probably for all those like Wildest factional teams, but like right now this season Zoo is generally weaker, so like I don't recommend people to use Zoo, like be it PvP or PvE side. And I think Florabelle as a unit is not like as powerful as some of the newer meta Wilders or the Graveborn units incoming, so that's why she's here. Lawson, okay, Lawson is one of the new units which initially I thought would be pretty versatile, because like goes really well with Iron Armor's Ardent, has this heal AoE damage, but then it turns out that Lawson's only really good with Dino in the PvP side. So like I think Lawson is just a very burst heavy unit, and he would fit into obviously the burst heavy comms like the Iron comms as well as the Dino comms in general. But then like in the current meta right now, I think Iron comms would actually need one slot to deal with Lily May. So like let's say if you use Iron Armor's Ardent, that's 3 units, right? Then you need 1 unit to bait out the Lily May, which is either Niru or Bryon. So that's where you are left with this slot where like you kind of need more damage for the burst, right? If you're being a burst variant, you need more sustain if you want like to play the sustain game. So that's where Lawson is in a very awkward position in that team, but definitely still usable for those burst teams in general. So if you want to get his like control up on the EX weapon, EX10 is recommended. Laika, mostly used for Dino tips for buffing as well as the physical defense debuff, but very niche. Niru, okay, pardon me for the naming, it's not Nara, it's Niru. So I think for this one the naming was a little bit off, but for Niru's case, I still see Niru being used in certain PvP matchups, specifically to counter Lily May, like I mentioned earlier. And I think Niru can also see some use with your Graveborn factional talent to give your team a little bit more survival. So very niche, but still seeing some use left and right. Although the EX weapon I think at EX5 is more than sufficient for the insta ultimate to pull through. Then for Igor's case, Igor is used in certain matchups in PvP against like those like single target bursts or single target seekers to be this annoying guy that jumps around. So Igor probably will see more use with more stats in the PvP side, but right now very niche. Like I don't see people building a team around Igor. Like he's used as an additional tool to deal with certain situations, so that's why he's in the niche category. Now Corey is also back down in the niche. Like for this season, right, in terms of the bossing side, like Korean hasn't actually seen much use anywhere. Like, I don't know why, like in terms of his damage output, he just doesn't scale as much. And I think in the light barrel side, we have Sinbad, which is a lot more meta. We'll talk more about Sinbad later. So Korean definitely fell, but I think if there are game modes where you need damage and you need a little bit of shielding for survival, Korean's definitely a unit you can rely on, and you can get him to EX8 for the maximum haste for him to get his stuff up. So EX10 if you use him a lot more, but like he's kind of underused now, so you can definitely probably try to use him in certain damage related contents if there's a game mode where he excels in, but then it's very far and between, so that's why he's here. Then for Marilee's case, EX5, Marilee, I'll say Marilee is probably gonna be still useful in Ravage Realm for damage related contents, for contents where she's able to build up her true damage and then do damage to the boss. But like, yeah, it's very niche, because in terms of the normal Dream Realm side, you have better units up there and you have better synergies and combos right now for better damage, so that's why she's in the niche category. Same thing for Reese. So Reese is this unit which I think could definitely see use for, I'll say, like damage related content. Like this unit over here has come in and out for the Mauler side in terms of Ravage Realm, so I do think that Reese will see some use there, but that's probably that one game mode that Reese will excel in. I in the past I did see Reese being used for PvP because of how OP the Mauler factional talent was, but this season not as much Reese because they're just more OP factional talents as well as units in the PvP ring itself. So moving up from Reese, we have the PvE Centric Tier. So I'll start with Carolina first. Carolina used to be a unit that probably can be used in the PvP side. I'll say, in fact, probably in a versatile tier in the past, but right now I think for the PvP side, number one, she's a little bit too frail, and number two, you have Bonnie to replace her role with the Iron teams in general. So Carolina probably might be able to see some use if you have her built up, but like I don't think she's like PvP centric. She's more PvE centric with your control teams, with her physical magical defense debuff against bosses for even more magical damage. So that's where Carolina excels at right now, and that's where I'll put her. So battle drills as well as certain bossing contents, as well as your AFK stages with Iron teams in general. And next one we have Velkia. So unfortunately for Velkia, I thought that Velkia would be a lot better, like more versatile in general, but right now I'll say Velkia is more PvE centric. So you can definitely use Velkia for the PvP side for her buffs as well as her potential damage output and her versatility in general, but like she doesn't have any seeking ability that goes after specific target, and even for her damage output, true damage is not something that's particularly game-changing in the PvP side. So that's where I think if you want to use Velkia, it's mostly for true damage potential against bossing contents and maybe certain endless Dream Realm bosses in general, for the buffs as well as the true damage output that she's able to provide. Then for Lucian's case, Lucius is probably one of the light barrel tanks that's easily accessible, right? Like one of the reasons why Danny is so low is because like there's a lot of decent tank options you can use that are a lot cheaper. Like Lucius is one of them. Like you can put Lucius on a wish list, get this unit to Supreme Plus, and he will be able to hold a fort for your light barrel factional talent teams. And if you do want to use a light barrel factional team, you can definitely put Lucius in the team for that defensive purposes. So I'll put Lucius in the PvE centric side because he does see some use with those teams, but then like he's probably a unit that will fall off to niche if you sort of have better tank options. So that's for Lucia's case. And then for Cassidy's case, mostly for bossing, like magical damage plus magical defense debuff, mainly battle drill right now, and maybe certain bosses in the future moving forward. Based on all the historic numbers for Cassidy, I guess she might see some use for those bossing contents moving forward. So that's for PvE centric Cassidy. EX10 good enough. Morale's damage output definitely rose up, but it's by no means meta, right? I think if you do have a mode where you need to run the magical damage light bearers and you need more damage on a single target side, Morale's definitely a lot stronger with her Supreme Plus skill upgrade. So that's why I think I'm gonna give her this PvE centric role with EX10 to be good enough. Like, is she meta? Probably not, because there are just way better damage beasts on top, but like, I think she's quite strong now, at least looking at just from the light barrel magical damage side. So usable for certain PvE contents where you can slot her in there. Then we have Tamasia. So Tamasia right now, yeah, the only place where I see Tamasia in is AFK stages, usually with all your Iron teams in general for your chain controls. So I think EX5 is more than sufficient. As long as you have enough stats for Tamasia to stay online, to control the Stampede itself, to hold the enemy in place, I think, yeah, she's good enough there. Then for Brutus and Tendra, they are mostly used with Mauler teams. For the newer accounts with all the Mauler units built up, and Brutus in general, I think definitely is a unit that will stay around for quite a bit. Like, this unit has this 5-second inbound, which allows it to come in and out in the meta, be it PvP or PvE side. But right now, I think in terms of the PvP side, like, I guess you can definitely run Brutus, but like, I think Brutus is not a unit I'll recommend you to build to Supreme Plus. Like, he's a unit where you can actually get him to like the Legendary tier, as there's more than enough, then survive long enough, and then use the Indomitable to buy space for your backlines, and that's what he does. Previously the case, still the case right now. And then Tendra, secondary tank for the Mauler class. So usually what like the free-to-play or the newer players will do is they will run like Coco, Smokey, and OD. And then you have maybe like Fresto as a frontline or Brutus as a frontline, and then you have Antendra to provide the additional shield, or you have Rowan in the team so that you can actually heal up, and then you can use Antendra as a primary tank in that case. So yeah, that's mostly where Antendra is seeing you, so that's why EX5 is more than sufficient. Kruger's mainly used with physical teams with the Dream Realm side, especially with Sinbad being so good this season. I think Kruger might see more use moving forward as we move into the later parts of the Dream Realm side. So for Kruger's case, if you use him a lot, EX10 is okay, but EX8 with the maximum haste buff for him to cast his debuff is more than sufficient. So that's for Kruger's case. Now we move up to the PvP centric side. So Dino, Scalita, Daniel, Barrow, PvP centric. Like, they are very PvP centric characters. Dino and Scalita specifically, they are pretty game changing with their EX15 ability for that massive true damage burst, as well as the insta Q threshold increase. So this is a very whale centric character that requires quite a bit of stats in terms of the tiers for PvP contents, and also sort of like a lot of resources for the EX weapon to see their maximum potential, but very, very powerful in those game modes. Daniel, very, very good with Dino right now, and probably one of the more solid Iron counters in the event if your opponent has answers against Lilime. So just shut down Iron's ultimate, and then you win the battle from there against Iron teams in general. And then Barrow has always been in and out PvP character. Right now with the Celestial Hypogean Tau itself, I think Barrow is one of those units where you can put on the Tau and can be a semi-carry, can also be this annoying unit to spam the ultimate itself. So that's the positioning of Barrow right now for the PvP side of things. So generally, I think these 4 units, they are still very good for the PvP related contents, but for the PvE side, they are not seeing that much use, unfortunately. So that's why I put them in this PvP centric tier. So that's for the Celestial Hypogean, right, from Dino, Scalita, down to Barrow. For Tarsi's case, okay, so this is a unit which I actually put on meta in the earlier iteration, like at the start of the season, because Tarsi used to be really strong in the PvP side and really dominant for the AFK stage pushing side, but somehow I think the loss of the light barrel factional talent, as well as the energy charging artifact on her, she's not as strong in the AFK stage pushing side, and she's relegated more as a PvP character where she survives long enough to cast her ultimate for that massive AoE control, as well as to buy time for like your Bonnie combos, for example, or maybe your Tailing combos, for examples. So that's why she's here at the PvP centric tier. But for Tarsi's case, I'm still going to recommend her to be at EX15, because like it's 30 more haste after her ultimate cast, and that's game changing. Sometimes that 30 haste is enough for her to quickly reach her next ultimate, and that's where you will be able to steamroll your opponent with Tarsi in your PvP team in general. So that's why she's here. Very strong in the PvP still, but not versatile compared to other units. Brian's positioning definitely went up, because like I think everyone, if you have been playing the game for quite a bit, would have a developed Lilime. So like if you want your Iron Almas combo to sort of go through, you definitely need a Lilime bait in your team. So you can do that either with a Nara, or you can do that with a Brian, or if you have some ways to sort of get your ultimate off immediately before Iron pulls off the ultimate, you can use those combo. But in general, Brian is your best answer to synergize with Iron Arden in your Iron Arden Almas burst comp to go against Lime. So PvP centric, and Brian as a single target damage dealer in the PvP side is actually quite spectacular. He also has the ability to come back to life, making him a pretty decent PvP character. And then next we have Kellen. So I'm putting Kellen in the PvP tier. So this unit is one of the new units, right? So by the time this video released, Kellen is not out on a global server. He will be out on a global server in the next day, but so far his performance skews him more towards the PvP side. Like, he's not that good for the Dream Realm side, obviously, because he's a mid shield. And then for the AFK stage pushing side, I think there might be some use for him, but then I think you have other better options. So if I were to group him, I'll be grouping him in the PvP side as a mid shield to absorb damage for the team. That's why EX10 is more than sufficient to get the stun on the EX weapon itself. And then for Viperion has always been a pretty decent like PvP mage. EX10 more than sufficient. Sylvina, very good with all the burst heavy comps, especially with the Graveborn, just absorbing a lot of stats as well as HP. You can combine Sylvina with Bonnie, you can combine Sylvina with Assassins, you can combine Sylvina with Seth to quickly burst down the enemy. So very good for PvP related contents. Nara as well. I think Nara is a unit which doesn't see that much use, but I've seen some Nara putting work in PvP. So even though people might want to put Nara in like underused or niche, but I think Nara is a unit, if you use her correctly, or if you have the teams to make her work, she's actually quite strong for the PvP side. So Nara, EX10, more than sufficient. Vala is one of the strongest light bearer units around, and Vala is a unit that steams roll off a lot of stats on the EX weapon and also the EX15 ability. So Vala has always been a very strong PvP character. So EX15, if you sort of like her a lot, you use her a lot for PvP, that's where she will actually start to carry you really hard because of the enhanced ability and even more stats in the PvP side of things. So next we have Seth. Seth got upgraded. So there are some units where I change out their EX weapon recommendation, because previously Seth was in underused tier. Because in the previous season, I think Seth is okay. Like, Seth is usable, but this season Seth is seeing a lot of use for a few reasons in the PvP side. Number one, with the Assassin Snipes, so you can pair Seth with Graveborn to do that Assassin Snipes, because you suck the enemy HP as well as their stats, and then Seth and Sylvina pounce onto them, and then you quickly remove the target. That's one. And then you can also pair Seth with the Mauler Tau to quickly jump on your prey to remove them, and then you move on to the next target. So this is where Seth's PvP prowess definitely is a lot better now, and I think if you want to use him for the PvP side, EX10 is more than sufficient. So that's for Seth's case. And then we have Elsa. So Elsa's Dream Realm damage is kind of pathetic this season, so like I don't see a lot of Elsa being used for general PvE contents. And in terms of the PvP side, mostly with Iron teams in general, so control burst teams. So you can also pair Elsa with certain control variants, like maybe Elsa Soren, for you to get this like stun into your rock wall and then snap down target kind of thing with the Molotov in general. So that's for Elsa's performance for the PvP centric ranking. Okay, so lastly we move on to the versatile and meta tier. So we'll start with the versatile tier first, and the first unit is Talin. So Talin is a unit which I think definitely still see some use for damage related contents for her AoE prowess, provided she's able to channel her stuff and she's able to sort of sustain that firepower throughout the whole battle. But I think the meta as well as like the unit combination right now is not the most favorable for her, so she's not as meta as we expected, or not as meta as she was at the start of the season, or maybe based on our experience from previous season. So I'm going to put her in a versatile tier, and because she's not as good as she used to be as a damage dealer, I think it would be actually quite a waste if you sort of commit more than EX10. Like, I think EX10 as a damage dealer is more than sufficient, but EX15 will give you the additional revive ability. So as a Celestial Hypogean unit, I think if you use Talin a lot yourself and you like her design a lot, I think EX15 is still okay, because EX15 gives her that upgrade for the revive on your ally. But other than that, as just a normal damage dealer, I think EX10 is more than sufficient. And then for Almas's case, in fact, right, I'll actually put Almas in PvE Centric, right? But the thing is, Almas is so good with Iron, Arden, and Damien, and they are like pretty much like still the king for AFK stage pushing, and they're still a very formidable combo for the PvP side. That's why I'm putting Almas in a versatile tier, right? Like he is a lot better than Danny as a tank because of the synergy, but that doesn't make him better as a standalone unit. So I can't actually put Almas in the meta because I think this unit as a unit is not meta. Like he is a good combo piece, but he's not a meta piece in general. So that's why he's in the versatile tier. EX8 for maximum haste, for the control as well as the shielding. Hewin is in a versatile tier as well because I think Hewin comes in and out for certain AFK stages if you need her massive heal with damage reduction, and obviously Hewin's one of the top tier healers for the PvP side. So those are the situations where I think Hewin is really good. So in all the different contents where you need her massive heals with damage reduction, I think Hewin's gonna see some use. Previously, Hewin sees some use in Ravage Realm as well because you need that heals to sustain that AoE burst coming out from the enemy. So I do think that if you have those kind of situations where you need her heals a lot, she's gonna come back for those bossing contests as well. So that's why she's in a versatile tier. For Lenya's case, Lenya's good for bossing, Dream Realm as a physical damage dealer, and also a pretty good assassin in the Dream Realm side, especially with the Wilder's factional talent, giving her that conceal at the start of battle, greatly increasing her survival. And with Lenya's burst potential, you can quickly burst down the enemy and then continue the conceal state and then move on to snap off even more enemies. So pretty versatile as a unit, pretty good as a damage dealer as well, just not like the meta level kind, but usable. Then we have Torrent. So in the previous list, Torrent was in the PvP Centric Tier, but for this one, I'm giving Torrent the versatile tier because Torrent as a tank is actually quite good with the magic charm ability, with the physical magical debuff. So there are certain situations if you don't have better debuffers, but you have Torrent built up and you need a debuffer for your team or a protector for your carry, that's where you can slot Torrent in, right? That has always been the Torrent role for quite a bit until like the more meta debuffers as well as the more meta tanks came into being. So Torrent, I think for PvE contents is still usable. For PvP, definitely still usable. Very good against melee teams, very good against melee unit for the ultimate to retaliate damage. So generally speaking, I think Torrent still usable across multiple different contents, and that's why I put him in a versatile tier. So for Torrent's case, EX5 is more than sufficient because Torrent actually wants to take more damage, right? For the ultimate to perform better and then have lower stats. Having lower stats on the EX weapon allows him to take more damage for that retaliate to hit harder. So that's why EX5. Ludovic, generally versatile healer. Very good for the HP percentage damage, but right now we are still in the earlier stages of the Endless Dream Realm, so we haven't actually seen Ludovic being in the top meta teams. But moving forward, there could be a possibility that with more stats, with more levels, we are able to scale up the pure damage from HP percentage, and that's where Ludovic might come back as one of the best HP percentage damage dealer or healer for those kind of scenarios. So now still very usable for PvP contents for your AFK stage pushing side with Graveborn teams in general. So Ludovic, very versatile. I think EX10 is more than sufficient. Then we have Hugin used with Sonya together with Sinbad for your Dream Realm purposes, and also used with Iron Almas Arden for the shielding and the control immunity. So generally versatile. Also can be used for PvP contents. I think Hugin is one of those rising unit because of the damage reduction, the shielding, as well as more importantly the control immunity. Yeah, control immunity is actually huge. So I think Hugin is probably a unit that might actually go up if we move forward with a more advanced meta. Then we have Rowan. Rowan's deficit push king with the potions, with the energy cycling and stuff. Can be used for PvP contents. If you're able to keep him alive for him to spam his ultimate for maybe 1 or 2 cycles, that's where you probably won the game with your ultimate spams in general. So that's for Rowan's positioning. Still usable. I won't call him the meta unit. Like he's probably meta, probably king for deficit push, but that's pretty much it. Like for PvP, usable but not the strongest. But if let's say you have a team and you have this sort of Rowan, Hewin, Rowan healer, Rowan something synergy, that's where you can slot Rowan in. So Coco also pretty versatile in terms of the different game modes, PvP, bossing contents. I think any game mode where you need Coco's massive damage reduction and shielding prowess, that's where you can use Coco. So very versatile support. EX10 is more than sufficient for that dispel. For Hugin's case, EX10 for the control immunity. For Rowan's case, for the mega potion for even more sustain for your team. So this is the EX weapon recommendation as well as the tiers for the units. Now for the meta tier, okay, First of all, meta tier, I think a lot of the units, you see them on a day-to-day basis, right? Be it your best Dream Realm teams, your best PvP teams, or your best AFK stage pushing teams in general. So I'm not going to speak too much about why they are meta. I'm going to talk about why these units are meta in different game modes and why I recommend their EX weapon level more. So Odie, king of early game, I think moving in the late game with Reyna's true damage conversion, Odie's probably gonna be still really powerful as a damage dealer for the Dream Realm side, and Odie's insta-kill has always been an in thing, so yeah, EX15, yeah, probably a good thing that you should have invested in for a pretty long time. So next one we have Twins. So Twins is basically in every single meta Dream Realm team, and obviously, if you use them a lot, EX15 is recommended because EX15 allows you to spam the ultimates on your other units that are bounded even more to further increase your damage, and that's where you can get a better positioning for Twins. So Twins is recommended at EX15 from EX10 because of their meta usage. You basically use them on a day-to-day basis in your Dream Realm side, and you can use them for AFK stage push and even certain PvP teams. So the resource dumped into the EX weapon will be worthy in the long term, or at least within this season itself with the current mechanics. So that's why they're recommended here with EX15. Harak is a carry that will scale up as we move later, as we move into the later stages of Endless Dream Realm because of all the stats gains as well as the potential true damage output. So Harak is also one of those steamrolly carry for the PvP side, so probably a unit that is gonna be still really strong and is still meta relevant if you have him built up. But this unit, I think EX15 will be way better for him, so that's why I recommend Harak to be at EX15. And then for Fresto's case, I think Fresto for this season might not be as meta, as dominant in the Dream Realm side, because there are a few bosses where Fresto just can't be used, and there are bosses where I think you have better options. But Fresto will be seeing some use, especially against Crystal Brute and maybe against bosses where you want to spam your ultimates or have this buff on your allies. So Fresto is still the best tank in the game, and that's why I'm going to put him in the meta tier, because you use Fresto for AFK stage pushing, you use Fresto for the Dream Realm purposes, you also use Fresto for the PvP purposes. So Fresto at EX15 allows him to sort of respawn another illusion for him to tank better, and more stats on Fresto allows him to do more HP percentage damage while having more stats to survive. So EX15, meta level. Reyna's case, Reyna, right, still in the endless mode is being used because of the magic charm ability, because he's able to convert a part of the carry's damage into true damage, making a lot of carries really powerful even moving into the endless Dream Realm side. Like for example Odie, like for example Sinbad, these are like pure magical, pure physical, but with that charm ability as well as the debuff ability that Reyna is able to provide, Reyna is still seeing a lot of use for all the different Dream Realm teams, even moving into the endless state. So being able to use Reyna to reposition your enemy in the PP side is still a thing, so that's why I'll say Reyna is still pretty meta relevant. Previously I think put him in the versatile tier, but like even in the endless mode, because of that charm ability, he is definitely still meta relevant. So for that, EX10 more than sufficient for the damage amplification as well as the damage reduction on the carries that you're trying to send in. So that's for Reyna. Lily May, I think needs no introduction, right? Like I don't know how to sort of praise her. Like she's just this like meta PvP character that is decently still usable for your Dream Realm purposes, and right now, even though we don't see her that much in like the top tier teams, she's still one of the premier damage dealers in the Dream Realm side. So like I mentioned earlier, as we scale into the late game, as we get more levels on our units, more EX weapon levels, more factional talent stats, basically just more stats in general, I think HP percentage damage or true damage will scale up. So units like Harak and Lime, they will probably see more use, or they will be like this late gamer damage dealer. So I'm not sure how much more, but even if you take away like Lily May's like Dream Realm usage, Lily May is still one of the strongest PvP character that basically counters Iron, that is very powerful there. So yeah, this unit is still very meta, very relevant on the damage side as well as on the PvP side. And then we have Damien, Iron and Arden. So yeah, I'm just gonna group them together because like usually they come in a trio. so Damien, I'll say, is the most flexible amongst the three, because you can run Damien with other wilders to do your wildest factional talent teams. So that's where I think out of these three, Damien with EX10 is more than sufficient for that, like additional haste and additional stats for more heals. Iron Arden is a pair with Almas mostly for that control, that burst with your PvP side, with your AFK stage pushing side. So any game modes where you need Iron, you will usually pair him with Arden, right? For the AoE control, that damage, and that debuff in general. So that's for Iron and Arden. So generally still versatile, one of the strongest AFK stage pushing team even moving forward. I think with the addition of Bonnie, this Iron Arden Bonnie team is like one of the most common AFK stage pushing team at my level right now, where we are at the super deficit stages, so that's why I put them in the meta tier. Then for Shakir, Smokey as well as Mikola. So Smokey needs no explanation as well. I think if you don't have every other unit built up, Smokey and Odie is actually really good still, and they are going to be quite relevant for the Dream Realm side if you are like lower on resources, if you're more PvE centric, or if you just started out in the game itself. So Smokey is still one of the best AFK stage pushing unit as well. If you have the Smokey teams, or you build around Smokey to be that finisher with the aroma damage. And then for Shakir and Mikola, this Lupine and Courageous Fear aura combo has always been a thing since Mikola's introduction. So I think moving forward, we are already seeing this Shakir Mikola combo for the Guild Supremacy side, and I think moving forward, if this aura combo is still a thing, I think Shakir is going to be quite meta relevant, because for a lot of damage related contents, you'll probably be pairing Shakir together with Mikola for that maximum aura buff. But the thing is, right now we do have the twins, so like there is this possibility that Shakir might be squeezed out, but Shakir is this very PvP centric character right now as well. So generally speaking, Shakir is versatile, and in terms of the bossing side, because of that Mikola Shakir aura combo, this makes Shakir, I'll say, meta relevant, right? If you have Mikola built up, you have all the other units built up to work with Shakir. I think this unit at EX15, which allows him to transform faster, to stay longer in a wolf form, is quite decent as well. So same thing for Mikola, needs no explanation, one of the best supports with all the attack buff as well as the heals as well as the Courageous Fear aura. So Sonya, Sinbad, this season's Dream Realm Kings and Queens. Yeah, that's all I gotta say. Cause like Sinbad is a carry that benefited a lot with this season's mechanic on the Magic Charm as well as the twins, which I talked about in the earlier video for Sinbad's meta relevancy. So Sinbad right now is very meta as a carry, especially in the Dream Realm side. Moving forward, I think he might fall off a bit because of that physical magical damage conversion into the Endless Dream Realm. But with Reyna's true damage conversion and attack buff, I do think that Sinbad might still be the king of Endless. I'm not sure how much of a king he will be, because I do think that HP percentage carries like Harak and Lime might rise up, but then like if we base it on his current performance for the Guild Supremacy side, for the current like Dream Realm meta usage, this unit is seeing a lot of use as a core carry. So the additional stats on the EX weapon to EX15 is quite good. So if you do use him a lot, and you do think that you're probably going to use him a lot, I think EX15 is okay. If not, EX10 is okay as well. So Sinbad is very meta relevant because of the combos with Sonya, with twins, as well as other meta Dream Realm characters to make him this uber powerful carry that's able to debuff and do a lot of damage at the same time. So Sonya needs no introduction. One of the highest stats buffer, I think I did a buffer comparison, and Sonya provides the most stat bonus, right, with the abilities alone. So Sonya with Sinbad is really meta relevant for the Dream Realm side. So that's why in the meta tier with EX10, I think EX15 gives you more survival. You can definitely upgrade her to EX15, but then like same as Sinbad, like I think these two can go to EX15, but they work at EX10. For Sinbad's case, because Sinbad is more of the primary carry, so more stats on the EX weapon will give you more damage to secure higher ranking. Then lastly, for the Bonnie, okay, so Bonnie's really powerful in the PvP side right now. Like there's a lot of teams I see Bonnie work with, Gravebonds, Iron Armors, control teams, store teams in general. So this unit in PvP is definitely up there. For the PvE side, I think the combination of the debuffs as well as the damage output on Bonnie made her a decently good bossing unit for certain contents. So generally speaking, I think Bonnie is a really good unit. I'll say she will fall off looking at how she's performing right now, but if you were to just grade her based on her strengths in the PvP side as well as her insane versatility for AFK stage pushing with your Iron Ardent teams as well as the PvP arena teams in general, I'm going to group her in the meta tier, and I think EX10 is more than sufficient. So that's pretty much it for this tier list. I hope this video is not too long, and let me know about your thoughts on this tier list as well as what units we will change out as well as recommend differently in terms of the EX weapon recommendation. Let me know what I can improve with this EX weapon priority guides itself, and thank you very much for tuning in. I'll see you guys again in my next AFK Journey video. Bye guys!